Welcome to chess, ladies and gentlemen. All right, so as you guys see, I just hit 2,000 subscribers, so I appreciate everybody very much. It took me a lot. It took a lot. It was a lot faster for me to get to 2,000 this time as it was last time. It took me like 5 months last time. So I appreciate the support. Rolling on. It might not be like a crazy milestone. I don't have like a Gab Matters 1 million, 1 point something million, but man, I'm really happy about it. I just started this in September, so I haven't been going so crazy long. So for all my people in the Philippines, magandang umaga, maanyong buntag, nainbag na bigat. Let me see, Masantos, Yakabwasan, and Mayad na agahan, I think. Yeah, I got them right. Yes, cool. All right, I'm gonna get faster at them. Believe me, I got you. But yeah, if you guys are ready to go, I was suggested a Roderick Nava versus Andrew Tang game, which I looked in the database and there aren't any official games played by the two of them. But they did have a Bullet Arena that they played 2 years ago on leadchess.org. And, Roderick Nava already did one of the games. So I was kind of thinking that was the only one. But there was another game that he did that he didn't cover. So it took a little bit of research. It took quite a while for me to figure, try to find the game and make sure he didn't record it himself. So yes, if you guys are ready to go, let's go ahead and take a look, see what we have for the game. All right, so we got D4, D5, knight comes to F3. We got E6, C4, knight to F6. Now, as you guys know, there's many different, combinations with this. Those of you that remember when I start with D4 and you got knight to F6, you can get to this position. You can play some Catalan type situations. You can play the exchange. Just go simply knight to C3. E3. There's all different kinds of possibilities here. So we got not that. We got knight to C3. Bishop comes to E7. And we have pawn takes D5. And now we have the Queen's Gambit declined exchange. Generally with black, they pretty much get to this point here, which is kind of like the last point that you'll keep, the tension here with these two pawns. And so after bishop to E7, that is signaling to white that they fully intend on declining the gambit. So it's kind of up to white what they want to do. In sometimes, you might have an E3 and then castles, something like this, E3 castles. And then after the bishop does develop, you do try to see if you can make white waste the tempo. So that's also a possibility, but we got pawn takes D5, pawn takes D5. You got bishop to F4. So white has been able to get their bishop out of the pawn chain. Sometimes you kind of push E3 and you have this bishop kind of hemmed in, not like that, but hemmed in like that. So this is pretty ideal for white. We got C6, just reinforcing that D5 pawn. We got E3. Bishop comes to F5. So black is trying to do the same thing with their own bishop, making sure that they don't pin it behind their, the pawn is already, so it doesn't really matter in this particular case. I'm wrong. Forget what I'm saying. Let's move on. So we got H6. Bishop comes to D3. Bishop takes D3. Queen takes D3. We got castles by black. We have castles by white. Knight B to D7. And then we have rook A to E1. And this is, as of 2019, a Nava Novelty. So I'm starting to get rolling on the Nava Novelties right now. So rook A to E1 is the first time it's been seen. Most likely, as you guys know in the database where they store games, they do not really have online games unless they're like official tournaments. So there's a lot of bullet and blitz and stuff like that played online that are kind of like uncatalogued. So we got rook to E8. The knight comes to E5. Knight takes E5. Bishop takes E5. We got bishop to D6. We got F4. Just trying to see if we can, get a take back here, open some lines up here for the rooks. So we do see bishop back to F8. Now, an interesting variation, instead of bishop to F8, was actually bishop to B4. After A3, the bishop takes on C3. And then you throw the little intermezzo in there. Bishop takes F6. Queen takes F6. Queen takes C3. Queen to D6. Queen to B3. We got B6. For black, it's just pretty strong because you do have this really severe hole here on E4. and you do have a backward pawn on e3. And so this is a major focus, and you'll see this will be relevant for the rest of the game. So like I said, the bishop does come back to f8. We got rook to f3, knight comes to e4, and then we have f5 by white. Now, you know, don't dream and think that you're going to be getting a pawn here, because after knight takes e4, pawn takes e4, queen takes e4, you are going to be pinning yourself with f6, and this is considerably better for black. So, you know, be very careful, you know, when you put your, you know, your queen opposite a heavy piece. So, like I said, after f5, we see f6, bishop comes back to f4, bishop to d6, rook e to f1. Bishop takes f4, rook takes f4. We have knight takes c3, pawn takes c3. We got rook to e7. And then, like I said before, you know, we have this issue here where, you know, black is trying to plant a piece here on e4 and further attack this pawn on e3. So we've come to the point in the game. If you guys do want to pause it and take a couple seconds to see if you can figure out what is a good move here for white, go ahead and do so real quick. All right, so for those of you that have been paying attention to what I've been saying, that this is a backward pawn and it's one of your biggest issues in your position. You also don't have really, you know, some good files for your rooks to, you know, kind of try to penetrate through and take over. In the game, we actually saw rook 1 to f3, just adding extra protection to this pawn. But for those of you that did guess e4, you guys will be absolutely correct. This is basically a way for you to jettison that pawn, you know, just get rid of it. You know, you no longer have to worry about there being a weakness on e3. You know, you're trying to get a little bit of a breakthrough here, swing rooks over. So after something like pawn takes e4, rook takes e4, and as you guys can see, you know, you guys have taken, you know, very much care of, you know, your weakness. So that's one of the things you want to be doing when you're playing your own games is, you know, look at your own position and look and see what your weakest piece is or what your, you know, weak point is, something that can be attackable by the opponent, and try to see if there's a way that you can get rid of it. Because you don't want to use your pieces to be babysitting, you know, weaknesses and stuff like that. So this is a perfect example of, you know, seeing that you have a weakness in your position and just getting rid of it. So, yeah. So we got rook 1 to f3, like I said, queen comes to d6. We got rook to g4, rook a to e8. And, I mean, the unfortunate thing about the situation, like I said, is the fact that this pawn is getting attacked. And, you know, you're hoping to try to get some type of attack going here on these files, but the queen doesn't really have a great way to really get over there. So that's one of your biggest issues, and this pawn is really kind of in the way of this diagonal. So you got rook f to g3, you got king to h8, you got queen down to e2, queen comes to a3, attacking c3, you got queen to c2, queen comes back to d6, you got queen to f2, rook comes to f7, you got h4, rook e to e7, you got h5, you know, just basically just completely stopping these pawns. You got king to h7, rook comes to g6, rook to e4, queen to f3, rook f to e7, and then you got queen to f2. You definitely want to move that queen out of the way because you don't want to lead a defense with your queen. So the queen comes back to d8. You got queen to d2, queen comes to e8, queen to f2, and you have king to h8. Now, it's important to know why king to h8 is played. It just seems like, yeah, you are triple teaming this pawn. So you can just win it like just completely, right? Like, so you're figuring, okay, if I just take here on e3, I'm gonna be good. But you're gonna be looking at rook takes g7, and this is with check. So after the rook takes on g7, you do have queen takes e3, and you are back equal. So now you guys both have 6 pawns. So you haven't won a pawn. You know, white gets their pawn back, and so king comes to h8. It basically makes it irrelevant that you have, you know, that pawn on g7. And then after king goes to h2, you got rook taking e3. And then after rook takes g7, like I said, the situation, this does not come with check. So this isn't forcing any type of movement by black. So this allows a really, really nice finish. You know, unfortunately at Roderick Nava's expense. Now, I will note that the game that he did show on his page, he did win that game. So that was pretty big. But we got queen taking h5 with check. The king goes down to H to G1. The rook goes to E1 with check, and then you have queen covering on F1 only move. After the rook takes on F1, king takes F1, queen goes to D1. We got king to F2, queen to E1 with check. We got king to F3, queen goes to E2 with check, king comes to F4, and then we have rook to E4, and this is check mate. Yep. So there was also another mate. There was a rook to E2 with check, and then after the king comes up, let me see. I think this is mating as well, something like that. Somewhere in there, there was a mate in there somewhere. Let me see. What am I doing that? Let me see. Rook here. King coming up here. Okay, and then swinging over. And then that's going to be... No, that's not mate. What's going on? Am I not seeing it? Where is it at? It's somewhere. It's in there. But yeah, rook to E2 was suggested. And then maybe that. Yeah. And then the king has to come down, and then that's mating here. Check. Yeah, I guess it's the same thing. Yeah, I was trying to work it out. Anyway, like I said, that was the end of the game here. So it was a nice game that was played. And like I said, I mean, you know, Roderick Nava did win their first game against each other during this, bullet arena. So you can't win them all. Unfortunately, the situation is when I'm going through Roderick Nava's games, he has covered a lot of games that he did win. I mean, personally, if I show my own games on my thing, they're most likely going to be games that I've won and not lost. So I end up getting some, kind of lost games that he played. So hopefully I can keep finding more games that he won. So I could kind of mix it up or get some draws, stuff like that. So until next time, guys, I appreciate it very much. Thank you very much for getting me to 2,000 subscribers. Let me know what else you guys want to see, and I'll do my best to try to get them. All right, appreciate it.